Hey, Michael.
Hello, Charlie.
How are you today?
I'm good, man. I was just saying I've come back from the gym, so my energy is okay, but I think the crash might come at some point, so I've got my coffee. Hopefully, I won't fall asleep.
Well, that leads me to my first question. How do you like your coffee in the morning?
I went through a whole phase of only black coffee, at the weekend, milk and sugar, whereas now I'm just like milk and sugar. So yeah, I use the coffee to pick me up. I don't know. Yeah, I know. So milk and sugar.
Milk and sugar, proper builder's coffee.
Yeah, although I think I put quite a lot of milk in, and a lot of builders have less milk, or I don't know. Yeah, so just one
So
sugar
the fancy term is a latte. As long as you just say, yeah, it's all right, Charlie, I have a latte. We're all good.
No, I don't get into fancy things. I'm not that bothered.
So, sort of the first question: how do we know each other, Michael?
We know each other from you being amazing at marketing, and me not so much. So we were put in touch, and with my business, obviously I was doing some good stuff organically, but I was like, I think I can be better at certain things. And then I spoke to your dad, and I spoke to you, and we kept in touch because we both had fitness in common, and I think we just both liked each other's vibe, really, and that's led to us having a chat today.
Well, exactly. I will say, absolutely love following you on Facebook and LinkedIn, just with all of the people that you sort of network with, hang out with. And what's really always awesome to watch from, outsider's perspective is just how giving you are to other people and just praising them. And it's just so much fun to, just to be able to watch from the outside, especially
Oh,
if,
thank
we've known each other sort of 2-3 years. Now,
you.
for the audience, do you want to just give us a lowdown on what it is that you do and why do you do it?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Michael Quigley, and my business is called Kataholos, which means like keep the big picture in mind. It's a play like a Greek word. I used to be a primary school teacher, and now I just teach adults, basically. But what I do these days is really leadership development. So if you're a business owner, or if you're in a leadership position, I help inspire and support business owners and leaders because it's really difficult. It's really, really hard. So do that as well as training teams. And then like Charlie was saying, I make a lot of content. So I've got podcasts, I've got books, blogs. I try and make a lot of free stuff because I've realized that I don't need everybody to buy from me. And in my opinion, a business should be giving value all the time. Sometimes you get paid, and most of the time you don't. Why do I do it? Because I love people. I see the world as one big family of 8 billion people. And that love informs everything that I do. And I've realized I haven't got time to waste. And that's why I try and commit myself to what I'm doing. And so far, it's working into year 6 now. And yeah, I just absolutely love it. I get to do stuff like, yourself, Charlie. It's pretty cool. So yeah.
Well, there's so much to unpack just in what you've just said just then.
Yeah, sorry.
One, I didn't even realize the world was up to 8 billion at the moment. So my brain's
Yeah.
just gone.
Yeah.
And, congratulations, really have to congratulate you for passing that 5-year mark. It is a big milestone for small businesses to exceed the 5 years, that you've gone past the sort of ideation stage, you've got traction, you're very much living and breathing and enjoying the maturity stage. So, I just want to make sure that we are, putting some praise there and congratulating you.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.
No, honestly, where the credit's due. And what I loved about what you just said then was, time is finite. It's so easy to just think that I can start that business tomorrow, or I can do that thing tomorrow, or I could do that. I could list out everything. It's like I'll start on Monday or whichever.
Yeah.
And so I, at the weekend, just finished a book, 4,000 Weeks. Don't know if you've read it yet or heard about it.
No.
Very much up your street, so I do highly recommend. And it's one of the narratives of that book is the time is finite. You have 4,000 weeks if you live to around kind of 80 years old. And what you do with that time is got to be really meaningful to yourself and meaningful to others. And which leads me on to, your focus is around leadership, which is a really hot topic, has been for the last number of years. You're already in an incredibly saturated market, and I speak for myself as also being in a saturated market. It makes it 1,000 times harder. But what is it There's a two-part question here. What is it about leadership that is so important to you, and why is it important for other people to, put some value behind it?
Yeah, really good question. So I think the first thing to answer your question, the first part, is to have a really good definition, because like you say, it's a very sexy topic these days. You can do degrees in it. You go back to the 80s, everyone's talking about management. Now it's leadership and thought leadership and blah, blah, blah. Two definitions that really help me. There's a sales guy called Anthony Iannarino, and he says, if you're responsible for improving the future, you are a leader. I love that. It's all about being responsible to try and improve the future. You can't have it without responsibility or accountability, and you're going to try and improve the future. And the second one, a good friend of mine, Doug Brumke from the Global Chamber, said, when you're dealing with your people, try and have nothing in your head so you can actually respond to what they need in real time. That's what a good leader does. So I think starting with those two definitions, I try and inspire people to help them to understand that by that definition, we can all be leaders in our life, whether you're a parent, whether you're a teacher, you're a business owner, whether you're a dog owner. If you are somebody who's willing to try and improve the future and hold yourself accountable to that in whatever way that is, then you are a leader. And the second part of your question is, most of my clients now are business owners and they are leaders. And that's why I wrote a book on leadership, right? Because it's incredibly lonely.
Of your book?
Sorry, yeah, it's Loving Leadership. That's my second book.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's all about love.
Where can you
just casually put that in there?
we're gonna put it in there. Though. Where can people buy it?
Yeah, you can get it from Amazon. Just type in Loving Leadership, 2 words, really easy to find. Thank you. But that thing of it's lonely, it's difficult. You're gonna be held to accountable. It's stressful. Leadership conversation is like running a business. You can't talk like that to everybody. They're not going to understand. And you cannot expect your followers and your team to inspire you. You've got to lead it. So I realized there's not enough support out there. If I said to you now, Charlie, how many people do you know that go around supporting leaders? What would you say?
I'd say a handful at best.
Yeah. There's like, say, it's a saturated thing. People are like, follow me, follow me, follow me. And I have had clients over the years say like, well, you're like people who leaders come to so they can be better at what they do. So I think I've found a little bit of a niche of like, I want them to be highly successful, but they need that support. They need that inspiration because as I found myself, it can be very lonely and difficult. And I think that's wonderful because we see all these examples in the world of, great leaders, bad leaders. But to me, it should be very much an everyday thing, just like your health and nutrition should be, just like living your values. If you go back to that definition, try to improve the future in whatever way you can, and you hold yourself accountable, you are a leader. And people find it really inspiring, by the way. They find it really encouraging. They're like, oh, so I don't have to have a title. No, John C. Maxwell, who's a leadership guru, says the title is like the first level of leadership. It doesn't mean you're in charge just because you've got a title, So that's my answer. I could talk about it all day, but that's my answer.
Well, absolutely. And, I really want to get into this. I love that you're separating the title to the leader, because there is that misconception, not by everybody, but there is that misconception as soon as you get a managing director title or a C-suite title, you automatically become a leader, and that's not what it's about. You have to grow into a leader. You have to live and breathe it. It has to be embody, your values. So, I really love that you've separated those two and distinguished them. But, this is about challenges, and sometimes when we look to great leaders, they make it look so effortless. They make it look so easy. Again, this is outside perspective. The Instagram filter window, they just seem to be able to do it. But having worked with them, that it's not. There does come hard work. It does come with mindfulness. But what would you say is one of the biggest challenges that leaders face? And do you have any tips and tactics of which to help them overcome these challenges?
That's a fantastic question. I think one of the biggest ones that shocked me, especially say if you're a leader, you say a business owner, is that say your team or your employees, you shouldn't expect them to care as much as you do. Now, what I mean by that is I don't mean you don't expect them to care, but the trap that business owners fall into is that, the business is my baby, it's my thing. And that's very dangerous because you can lose perspective. But I've definitely noticed that if you are a leader, there has to be a separation. You're not one of them anymore, hence the loneliness, But once you embrace that and you realize like you are a special person, again, like my friend Doug Brunke said, leaders have to play by different rules, because if you carry on doing what you've done, you'll always get what you've got, or diminishing returns. So I think that's the first one, is understanding that you are a bit different, whether you like it or not. You are, leaders in terms of, percentages are a very, very, very small amount of population. Just like, say, billionaires, we think there are a lot more of them than there are because we see and hear about them. Like the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda, amazing woman, right? But there aren't thousands and thousands and thousands of people you're hearing about like Jacinda all the time. So that's the first one. I think a lot of leaders, they're like, well, I care. Why don't they? Why can't they say to me, why can't they just see it the way I see it? And it requires that emotional intelligence and that effort and the empathy, really, to kind of say, well, it's like if you're a parent saying to your 5-year-old, why don't you see it the way I see it? A 5-year-old ain't going to see it the way you see it because they're 5, right? So that's the problem. And then the second thing, which I think can help with that, is once you kind of say, okay, I'm a little bit different. You touched on it before. People think you can only improve yourself as a leader by going on a course or reading a book. And I'd make the case that as long as you're not hurting anybody, you can do anything to improve your ability as a leader. If we go back to that idea before, about improving the future, whether it's like we do, we like to keep fit, well, that 100% improves your ability as a leader. Because the moment you start shouting at people and you're bad mental, you've lost them. You've lost them. But if you're relaxed and calm and focused and healthy, you give off that vibe. So I think that's the thing, giving people this there's accountability that, you are a bit different, embrace that, but you've also got this freedom. I have so many ideas and they come from all sorts. For example, one of the best people who's taught me about leadership, other than my father, is my dog, right? Kutchi, the chocolate Labrador. He is patient. He is kind. He always gives off a good vibe. Even, dogs, even when they're suffering, they don't really want to put that vibe on you because they care about you so much and they want to still try and please you and stuff, So I think it's that paradoxical thing of saying, okay, I've got this really important position. How do I improve myself in that area? How long's a piece of string? And that's when it starts to get really, really exciting because you can say, well, however you want to do it, man. It's your leadership. What does it look like? And people say, I can choose. Like, whatever you want to do. So my leadership comes from the heart. Other people are more strategic. That's great. Different people suited for different situations.
And I love that you've used your doggo as an analogy. One of my little favorite videos that's doing the rounds on my social media at the moment is actually the voice of the Transformers, right? So I know how obscure what Transformers have to do with leadership. Now, I'm not a Transformers fan at all. It's not my kind of vibes, but I love this video so much. So the and apologies, I don't know names, but the voice actor was going to go into the audition to do the voice of the main character, who is that strong male leader. And the Hollywood wanted him to be shouting and big and loud and and just be very gregarious in people's faces and things. But he had spoken to his brother, who was a leader in I think it was in one of the sort of Vietnam Wars. He's American, and his brother said to him, be a real hero, be a real leader, be calm, be collected, be, far lower toned, be far, like you saying, that emotional intelligence. If you've got that calming nature because you're looking after people and you're responsible for people, you're not going to be chaotic. You're not going to be shouting. You're not going to be, this American things where like screaming the things. And I thought that was a brilliant analogy because I'd never think of that. How we then just put it into the voice and you went, oh yeah, no, that sounds like a leader. But that I'm not going to stand there and do a male voice and be that kind of temperament because that's not my temperament. If I was trying to be a leader, like you said, you've got to find your rhythm, you've got to find your style. I love that you said that your style very much comes from the heart. It very much comes from sort of that empathy, that caring, that nature, and and you've like you've used that, your values then across your products and your services that you then provide. So I think that, you know, that's really, really lovely.
Thank you.
So, you know, we've talked about sort of a lot about leadership. So, you know, I want to sort of dig into a little bit more about your journey over the last 6 years. You have done this massive achievement to get over the 5-year hurdle. You know, what would you say? You know, what would you say over the last 6 years where you've had a sort of massive, like massive mistake, or what you thought at the time was a huge fail, but actually, you know, we're a few years on, you've gone, that was probably one of the best things that happened to me.
So many, if we're being honest, there's so many. And funny, the things that you think sometimes will work out and they don't, and then the things that you think do and people are going to love it and they don't like it so much. I think one of the biggest things that actually improved the business 100%, there were two. And the first one was everything I did before COVID was based face-to-face. I always wanted to go online and deliver stuff online. But again, if I'd have said to some of my clients, "Do you want to click on this link?" they'd have said, "No, you lazy thing, you can come to my office." So it actually worked really well. But I remember there was this day, my mum works for me. She's my directress of operations. I said, "You can call yourself whatever you want." That's her title. She's amazing. And I was a bit scared, to be honest. I sat down and I just said to her, "We're not quitting, are we?" And she just looked at me and went, "No." I went, "Well, that's it. Okay, that's it." And so that freed me up then to make a complete shift in the business. And if I hadn't have done that, we'd have probably gone under. Well, in fact, we would have done. So that led to the growth of the business, which was amazing. And then again, going back to my mother as an example, because I've got my father does leadership consultancy, I've got this little team. And people would say, "Oh, a family business." I'm like, "Well, I'd fire them if they weren't very good." You know, it's not just because she's my mum. You know, we joke about it. But something I learned very early on, maybe only my second year, right? And I hold myself accountable on this. I was scared about something. Maybe it was money, and I can't even remember what it was. But my mum said something to me she'd never said before, and she said, "Look, stop." So what do you mean? She said, "Look, I was fine until I talked to you, and you've put that fear on me. Don't put your fear on me. I don't want that. Do you not see the effect you're having?" And I was like, wow, you know, very early on, didn't realize. I mean, I do know these things, but I wasn't practicing it all the time, or I don't know, I assumed that she understood where I was coming from. But I've then been very careful to always, like you said before, you got to be very careful the vibe you put on people. But it was just a quick conversation, but I've used that ever since, over the last 4 years since that happened, to always make sure that I don't put, you know, any kind of negative vibe onto people. Because you hear this, like you said before, about vulnerability in leadership and transparency. My own personal opinion is yes, to a point, but you do not want to go to somebody with a problem and then be freaking out and say, "Well, I don't know, what do you think?" Like you said before, you want them to be nice and calm and say, "Okay, thank you for bringing it to my attention, we'll get it sorted." So that level of professionalism, I think you're always growing extra layers. And so that was, you know, a strategic change that I made. Fortunately, it was very successful. But then also the danger with leadership as well is, especially with yourself, you think you know yourself. So you think you're consistently being, you know, real with yourself. And then sometimes it takes somebody who knows you very well to say, "Excuse me, you messed up there." Or do you realize the vibe you're giving off? And ever since then, even if it's just before you go into a meeting with your team members, taking 5 minutes to just say, "Okay, the vibe I give off in this meeting." My father says, it's a brilliant quote, "An organization is the length and shadow of one person." Basically, I mean, you can cast a shadow over people without even realizing it or not. And so I'm very, very careful with that. I think too many people are what I call verbally sick all over people, just put their stuff on people all the time. And if we're being dead honest with that person, say thanks for that, the more like say I had my own stuff and now you've just come at me with that. So it's quite a long answer, but I want to be really honest so people see that I'm just a normal guy, and strategically as well as emotionally, you know, I'd like to think it's maybe a better person in the long run.
Well, this, you know, leadership, like I said, transcends into your personal life. It transcends into, you know, business. And I love that you said about this venting word vomit personality. You know, they would typically what I'd call energy vampires to me. And my top tip actually comes from what you do, you know, relationships, when your partner is having to have that vent, you know, is asking that question, do you want a solution here or do you just need to talk? You know, and you can do that in a relationship, but in a work environment, it can be a little bit different, because then we're talking boundaries, then we're talking, you know, it's just having that level of self-awareness of, like you say, of who's around you and what is going on.
Yeah.
So is there any, if, say you catch yourself, and everybody has a bad day. Let's say you've been really mindful about all the different practices, and one day just slept bad. There was traffic in the morning. Basically, all your spoons are gone, and it's only just 9 o'clock. And you've hit your desk.
Yeah.
What would you recommend to leaders in that situation?
First thing is to be kind to yourself, because most people whip themselves way too hard, especially in business, especially in leadership positions. So something that I think works really well is Stephen Covey, who I'm a big fan of, I'm sure you are as well, talks about values clarification. Basically, it's taking the time at the start of the day, middle of the day, end of the day, to think about your values and saying, am I living these? So we all, we have these days, like you say, where things are going wrong. You don't get any of your to-do list done. But really, nobody knows about your to-do list, and nobody really cares. What they do care about, like I said before, is the vibe that you give off. And so that ability to just say, can I live my values today sincerely, and will that come across to people, is really, really good. Because otherwise, we're living our lives in a transactional way. When I get this, I'll be happy. When I do this well, I'll be happy. And it doesn't work like that. Far better, like we said throughout our conversation, is the ability to calm yourself down and to be able to go, okay, it's more than just these little things here. Even in the midst of something horrendous, we can do well. I'll give you an example. I had to take a family member to hospital about a month ago. I was tired. I was hungry. I just finished my workout, right? I was ready for the weekend. Got a quick text. Can you go? Yes, I can. Spent 9 hours, right? I didn't feel great in that moment, and I didn't need to. All I had to do was to be there for that person and stay calm. So the final thing I'd say, which really helps, is I got it from Professor Steve Peters. Fantastic guy, wrote the Chimp Paradox. Actually did a follow-up most people don't know, called Path Through the Jungle, which is equally as good. He basically just said, calm yourself down, make a plan. Calm yourself down, make a plan. And I absolutely love that. Because if you make a plan when you're frazzled, it's going to be a bad plan.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just calm yourself down and don't do anything, things are going to go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't actually take long.
No.
That ability to just catch yourself and just say, yeah, okay. It could be 30 seconds. It really doesn't have to be that long. And then you make a plan, and people always say, what is the plan? And we always say, it doesn't matter. A crap plan is better than no plan. A plan is just a way forward. So like you've just said, in this moment, can I just get through this next half a day, this next hour, this next meeting? And then when you get to the end of the day, the last thing I'd say, which is really, really important, is self-reflection. To look back on the day, and don't actually look at all the stuff you've achieved and you've done, because nobody cares. Look back on that values clarification, say, under pressure, was I still able to demonstrate my values? If the answer is yes, well done, do it again. If the answer is no, like we all do, you say, okay, can I get back on it tomorrow? And what that does, it stops people from kind of having repeated bad days, because you've only ever got to do them one day.
I absolutely love that answer, because one of the tools I've found over the years, and actually I don't have children, but this is what you're meant to teach children, is when they're having a tantrum, when they are unable to express their emotions because they're still processing and learning what emotions are, whether it's sad, tired, sleepy, hungry, whatever it is for them is you teach them to say breathe. Just get them to breathe deep in and out, just enough for that rational brain just to kick in to go, okay, now let's try and verbalize what's happening, what you're feeling, and what it is that you want. And whether you're, like you said, 5 years old or 10 years old or 30 years old or 50 years old, we're still humans with the same makeup who still need to, like I said, just calm that emotional monkey brain and let that rational brain kick in just enough to make any plan that just to get through the day, and then you can move forward. And then in 24 hours you probably change the plan, let's be honest, but at least you're out of that that headspace, that zone that was which is really stressful. Now, one thing we haven't touched on, one thing that we do have in common is we are in the family business world, which just, I've always said, it is a whole different way of doing business. Well, you know, and every family business I've come across, there is a ton of similarities. And, you know, we're fortunate that we have I'd say very successful family business relationships. You know, I know you work really great with your mum. I work really great with my dad and got a lot of respect.
Mm-hmm.
Is there, you know, I love that you use the analogy that, you know, she was able to say, stop, you know, just have that candid, frank, let's, you know, stop talk. And, you know, me and my dad will also have dialogue where, it's an interesting, let's call it a flavoursome, interesting conversation. You know, we don't see on everything eye to eye. We don't agree on everything. You know, if we wouldn't be partners in business if we thought exactly the same on everything. You know, when you have those more challenging conversations, because it's not that we don't have a different goal or disagree. You know, we're trying to get there, but we're coming at things at different perspective with different skills. Do you have any tips for other family businesses that might be slightly different from, you know, a non, you know, let's call it a genetic relationship?
Yeah, I think the first thing is you do not have to work with somebody just because they're a family member. You can actually, like say, go completely the other way, and you feel like, I can't say that because that's my brother. I can't say that because that's my mum. So, like you say, what could be a really positive thing might not be. So, for example, you see when people start a company and then the next generation inherit the company and they don't care about it as much or they don't do as well. So it might not be a positive thing. Like I always say, you know, I sacked my mum, she wasn't any good. People laugh about it. But it's the case. If it didn't fit, we wouldn't do it. You know? So that's the first thing. It doesn't have to fit. And don't feel bad if it doesn't fit or if you try it and it doesn't work. The second thing that I think just works really well in business in general is something that I always talk about. I made a little technique to try and remind myself, like say, how to handle these situations. We call it the separation technique. Okay. So basically, everybody takes things way too personally. Everybody. I don't care who you are watching this. And if you sat there going, no, don't, then you've just taken it really personally, right? And so that level of self-awareness is really helpful, though. It's true. It's so helpful because if somebody says something you don't like, don't agree with, okay. They're not sat there going, I think you are a bad person, or I think this and I think that. So we internalize it way too much. That's really helped me. Anytime somebody, because if somebody's criticized me, I always think, who is the person? Is the critique helpful? Can I learn from it? Blah, blah, blah. And if it's not, then you can discard it. But just recognize that. If somebody's picking holes in your strategy, or like my mum said to me, you know, your vibe isn't good. I reflected on that because I respect her and I love her and I respected her opinion. So if you've got good people like that, you respect their opinion. If they're holding up stuff about you don't like, listen to them. Because if we can get over ourselves and say, they said this to me. And then sometimes as well, people say really useful things, just the way they say it isn't helpful. And you can go away and self-reflect and go, well, they didn't phrase it that well, but actually that was really sound. You know, like when I said to my friend who I work with, I want to have a podcast, he said, oh, nobody cares. That was actually very useful feedback because you're right. I was saying, you're right. You know, I need to do it a little bit differently. Like the way you're doing it, you do it in the way that's right for you. So just bear that in mind. Anytime you're dealing with people, don't take what they say personally and say that to them. Say, we're here to talk about this topic. And whatever we say, we're not going to take it personally. And again, it takes time and practice. Just saying it once doesn't mean that's, you know, how they're going to react. But that's definitely helped me because eventually you're going to come up against somebody who disagrees with you and knows more than you or whatever. And if we're not able to handle those situations, we're actually capping our own potential because of the alternative is you just surround yourself with people that agree with you all the time. And that's an echo chamber. There's no growth in that. That's actually a very narcissistic way to run your business. You don't want to do that.
That just sounds like my absolute worst nightmare because people keep saying yes to me. But, you know, say on that, there's there's two tools that I always use every day, I think. One is from a book called Difficult Conversations. Really a great book again. I can't remember the author, but it, you know, comes up in Amazon. And the biggest thing I took from it was there's always two sides of a conversation, you know, and that whether you're agreeing with each other or you know disagreeing with you. This is obviously in the disagreeing point. You know, I had a close friend recently who was giving me some sort of negative feedback, And what I did was I had to stand back from it and look, okay, if this is the words that are coming out of his mouth, what's the languages that he's saying, which is actually giving him his true intentions. So actually what he was telling me was different from his true intentions and what is his true message. And it's almost, I had to read between the lines and pick out a variety of words. And then I had to then correlate that with what my perspective is and why do I agree, and what's his perspective and why he disagrees. And then by writing it all down, like, almost like a pro and con list, both of the sides, I was able to go, right, this is why this is failing. This is why the stress testing is really bringing out this disagreement. And, not to cut a long story short, we really came to like an even better conclusion, like a better relationship, because we had that difficult conversation that we rationally worked our way through and just explained things. And I recognize that, that's a skill I've had to work on for years and years and years and years. And then the other sort of tool I got from my business mentor, Pete Body. Amazing, honestly, amazing guy. Highly recommend getting in touch with him on LinkedIn. He's just one of those just giving people who is just full of knowledge. And this is the biggest thing that really helped me with my working with my relationship with my dad is we always, even though we always kind of, there's a few subjects where we just constantly kept them butting heads on, I want to say in a good way. But what we ended up doing is, here's the thing that we're passionate about. Let's say this is the subject we're both passionate about because we're clearly verbalizing it and got strong feelings behind it. What we ended up doing was, here's the Venn diagram. So here's my dad, here's me, and here's the middle. So in the middle, we're writing about what is going on, and we're realizing, okay, who is actually in the business got the role of the ownership? Who's the leader on this part of the business, and who does this accountability and responsibility does this fall under? And 9 out of 10 times, usually if we're butting heads, is because one of us has crossed into each other's domains. Whether I've gone into an area which is his responsibility, his leadership, hence where the disagreement, or he's come onto my side, and then obviously this is where this sort of the fraction of disagreements come from. And because we both look at this Venn diagram, we go, oh, it means that it gives us also gives us permission to go, right, one of us is going to back off now. We've said our piece, we've said our feedback. It's their responsibility within the business, right? We can move on now from this approach. And it helps us to reframe it, because we both want the same thing. We both want the successful outcome. So it brings it far more back to a far positive, proactive conversation than what could very easily spiral or escalate. Like, we never do, thankfully, but this one tool in itself was a big game changer for us.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's a really good one. I'll keep it in mind.
So one kind of sort of, we've just come to a close. Final question: what is one thing that somebody can buy from you that is under £100 that would add a ton of value to their life?
Oh, that's a good question. I think there's two. So first is I have a podcast called Food for the Journey. There's 70 episodes, 18 hours of content. That's completely free, so you can fill your boots for that for free. Then I got 2 books. So one's on health, my approach to health and wellbeing. The other one's leadership. Combined total less than £25. So I think for that you get 2 books, 18 hours of content, £25. That's not bad.
That is insane. And I've just learned myself that you've started doing the podcast in Spanish, so how long have you been learning Spanish now?
2 years.
2 years, and already, one of my this is, I think, why we get on so well, and why I just so enjoy talking to you, is you go, right, I'm going to learn Spanish, then I'm going to do a podcast, and then you do it. It's this, you do the action, and you put yourself out there, and you're so willing to have that sort of feedback. And if we're going to take anything away from today's podcast, that's the one thing I would always love to promote to everybody. So they can get 18 hours worth of podcasts, 2 books from yourselves on health and leadership. I personally listen to your podcast as well, and it is so, like I always said, it's so personable. You feel like, you're talking just to me, nobody else. It's very different from this style. But as you pointed out, when you're doing your products, you're doing your service, and you're doing your business, it does have to be, a part of you, part of your personality. And I think, that's another really great takeaway from today. So thank you so much for being on the podcast.
You're welcome, Charlotte. It's been lovely to spend some time with you.
Absolute pleasure. And I hope you have a great rest of the week.